This is the Ohio AgNet podcast powered by Ohio Corn and Wheat. Experience the benefits of membership. Join or renew today at ohiocornandwheat.org. There's a program for young, beginning, and small farmers to set them up for success in Ohio agriculture. Learn all about the Growing Forward initiative from Farm Credit Mid-America. It provides this important segment of customers access to sound and constructive credit through individualized programs and products. Get the details coming up on this Ohio AgNet podcast. Plus, if you live in rural Ohio, you know firsthand there are challenges facing agriculture and rural communities. How is USDA's Rural Development Office working to improve the lives of rural Ohioans? The Ohio Director of USDA Rural Development, Charles Tassell, joins us on this podcast with all the details. Coming up after this.
Ohio Corn and Wheat, working on behalf of farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat has some vital roles in helping the profitability of Ohio corn farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat's role in creating the next generation of successful farmers is bringing those farmers together.
It's important for farmers all across Ohio to get involved with Ohio Corn and Wheat just because they are farmer-led and it lets our voice be heard.
Experience the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. Join or renew your membership now at ohiocornandwheat.org.
Securing rural communities and agriculture for the future. That's what Growing Forward is all about with Farm Credit Mid-America for new, young, and beginning farmers. Amy Weaver is a Senior Financial Officer with Farm Credit Mid-America here in Eaton. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Ty.
This is a project you're pretty passionate about. Tell me about Growing Forward.
It is. I love our Growing Forward program. Growing Forward was really born out of a need. We needed a way to serve young and beginning farmers. And so we created Growing Forward to do that. And it's been a passion project. I love it because I get to see how my customers have grown through the program. And I've been with Farm Credit for 28 years now. So I know what it was like before we had Growing Forward and now that we do have Growing Forward. And the difference is just phenomenal about the impact that we can make for young and beginning farmers.
Why is it so important to focus on this aspect of Ohio agriculture?
Well, for young and beginning farmers, there's a lot of barriers to entry for them. Land costs are high, input costs are volatile. We have tighter margins, really, than what we've experienced for several generations. So it's more cost prohibitive to enter production agriculture than what it's been for a really long time. So Farm Credit tries to approach that in multiple ways. We invest a lot. We invest through our partnerships with Ohio Farm Bureau and 4-H and FFA programs. Most of us as team members were maybe part of 4-H and FFA. And for me personally, FFA was a huge impact on my life, and it is still a passion project for me. I'm still actively involved in it. So we not only invest with money, but we're investing with team members' time as well into those programs. And then when we build on that, when someone is ready to start buying their first farm, or to maybe have that operating loan for their first group of cattle, we step in with the Growing Forward program. And that is really just intentional and completes the cycle to help them get started in production agriculture.
There are a lot of barriers out there if you want to get started in agriculture. How do you remove those barriers and at the same time set these young, new, and beginning producers up for success?
Absolutely. That's a really great question. So getting started in agriculture, so we know that there's really three things that it's going to take. It's going to take capital, it's going to take some discipline, and it's going to take a clear plan. So Growing Forward helps us to accomplish that. We have individualized credit, we have constructive credit with goals set along the time frame that are reasonable and easy to obtain. And we have an educational component that just continues to build with it and go with them throughout the Growing Forward program. So really those three pillars per se come down into a written business plan, annual financial statements, and then also attending a Know to Grow conference one time within the first 2 years after you obtain your loan. So there's some structure behind that program. But I've seen a lot of success with it. I've seen my customers grow from that first group of cattle to building the cattle finishing barn to buying a family farm that they've always dreamed of owning. It can go all the way down the perspectives of it. So Growing Forward is a very intentional program. And it's not about making a loan. It's about building a business, and it's about building a relationship. And that's really the heart of the program.
This is the information that Dad and Grandpa learned just through the School of Hard Knocks before programs like this were here, right? So
yeah.
let's talk about that education perspective a little bit. What's involved there? What do new young and beginning farmers need to know as they get involved in agriculture?
Absolutely. So the written business plan is kind of the first component of it, and that's something we're going to ask our producers to write for us. And with the written business plan, it helps them to really set out their thoughts, show us what their contingencies are. And so that's really a first thought-provoking piece of it, and it helps to give them a path that they can go back to, see if they're still on the right path, how it's changed, see if they're accomplishing their goals, what's their short-term goals, what's their long-term goals. We want to know because we want to help them accomplish them. So that's the written business plan piece of it. The annual financial statements really gives us an opportunity to sit down each year and review it and see where they are tracking at, get a really deep understanding of where their financials are, tracking their progress year over year to make sure that they're on track to accomplish their goals. That's ultimately what we're here for, is to help them accomplish what they want. And then you have the Know to Grow conference. Know to Grow is so awesome. It is a 1.5 day conference. It's offered multiple times throughout our 6-state association territory. And it really helps to bring them in and sit down and say, okay, we have Freddie Farmer. This is Freddie Farmer's, business plan. Help us walk through it. What kind of loan decision might you make? And then it dives into their own financials. It gives them the tools and the power to be able to look at a balance sheet and say, I understand what this is. I know what I'm looking at. I know what my working capital is. I know what my equity to asset is. And help them to learn to understand their financial position so that they can just have a better overall understanding of their financials. And that's really what Know to Grow is about. We have some really phenomenal breakout sessions during Know to Grow that allows them to dive into advocacy, risk outlooks, just to help give them a more well-rounded, maybe a different perspective to take home with them.
As you know, agriculture is constantly changing. There's a lot of moving pieces and parts, and that means that programs like Growing Forward have to evolve as well. What do you see that looking like as we move into the future?
Sure. So we've added an award for Growing Forward. It's called the Forward Thinker Award. It is a self-nominated award, but it's about your leadership, your advocacy, your growth within agriculture. And there's a committee that meets to assign that award winner. Our 2024 Forward Thinker Award winner was Emily Mullen with Mullen Dairy and Creamery. So right here in Southwest Ohio, and that was really exciting to see Emily win that award and win the $5,000 grant money that she can use in her business and however she wants to make that impact. Our 2025 award winners are Matt and Rachel from Indiana, so still pretty local to us, and that's always exciting to see someone be so successful and to have the grant money to help them continue to grow within their program. But I talked about Know to Grow, love Know to Grow, but that education doesn't stop with it, and it continues. We also have the Know to Thrive conference, which will dive deeper into like a cash flow analysis, break-even analysis, and then we also have Know to Share, which starts to dive into a little bit of succession planning and transition, and how does that work for our customers. And if you are the young farmer who maybe wants to transition into an operation, it's bringing that partner with you that you might be transitioning with and seeing how you can work through that together. So there's a lot of educational opportunities. And the one thing I didn't mention before, one of probably the best or biggest advantages to the Know to Grow, Know to Thrive, Know to Share program is the fact that it's a networking opportunity for our young producers. They get to sit down, they get to work together, they get to have meals together, they get to have fun together with other customers who are in the exact same situation they are. Whether that might be grain farmers, greenhouses, equine facilities, livestock, cattle, no matter what it is, those producers are there at those conferences too, and it provides them the ability to be able to network with somebody who maybe isn't their next door neighbor, but in the exact same situation. And what we're finding is across this program is those relationships last. Who you meet at Know to Grow is somebody you might still continue to network with 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and that becomes your sounding board. And that's a really intangible benefit of those conferences.
A lot of information, a lot of opportunities for new, young, and beginning farmers through Farm Credit Mid-America, particularly the Growing Forward program. And Amy Weaver, very passionate about that. Where can people find out more about that program and everything we talked about today? Absolutely.
So information about the Growing Forward program can always be located on our website, which is www.fcma.com. You can also contact your local Farm Credit office and ask to speak with a financial officer. All of us are well versed in Growing Forward and love the program. It's a difference maker.
Amy Weaver, Senior Financial Officer with Farm Credit Mid-America from the Eaton office today for the Ohio AgNet. Great to see you and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
If agriculture is your way of life, you need news you can count on. That's why Ohio farmers turn to Ohio's Country Journal, your source for the latest in crop updates, livestock insights, market trends, and the stories that celebrate country life across our state. Every issue keeps you informed, connected, and ready for what's next in Ohio agriculture. So don't miss a beat. Renew your subscription or sign up today at ocj.com/renew and grow with the publication built for Ohio farm families. That's ocj.com/renew.
If you live in rural Ohio, I don't have to tell you, there are challenges facing the agriculture sector and rural communities. How is USDA Rural Development working to improve the lives of rural Ohioans? Well, to find out, we bring in the director in Ohio for USDA Rural Development, Charles Tassell, to find out. Director Tassell, good to see you.
Good to see you, Ty. How are you doing today?
Doing great. So let's start from the beginning. Right. When people hear USDA Rural Development, they may not fully understand what your office actually does. Explain how rural development impacts the day-to-day lives of farmers and all of rural Ohioans.
You know, it's interesting you make that point because I was actually at one of the Farm Bureau county policy meetings, and the first question was, wait a second, rural development, what exactly are you developing here? And part of the response, I answered the young lady and I said, you know, you mentioned about having your children available to be with you on the farm or to be able to come out and be able to work in the community. Well, we're focused on making sure you have those opportunities. Rural development's a little bit different than like Farm Services Agency. We're kind of the community around the farm typically, and we do occasionally have grants and programs that affect farmers and work directly with farmers. But the real focus is there's kind of a threefold process that we look at. One is housing, so direct housing loans, single family housing, and even helping site plans. So there's our 502 program. We also have a 504 program, which I love this program because it's for those elderly folks 62 and older, which doesn't seem that much more elderly anymore, but you know, it is what it is on that side. So, but they own their own home and they need some help. And this is really where a grant program comes in handy because at 62 and owning their own home and being low income, they can actually apply through our offices, which we have one in Marietta, one in Hillsborough, one in Findlay, and one in Massillon. Those offices, then what we can actually do is you can apply and get up to $10,000 in grant money to fix up that home for health and safety related issues, and also up to $40,000 in loan that is a low interest loan to help pay back, you know, whether it's a roof, that's one of the most common things we see, or plumbing issues like that. But of the three things, housing is one of them. And then we also have kind of the building, business and industry side of things. So this is areas where businesses that want to grow or expand. So we're working with a grain mill, help to expand that. We're working with lumber yards, working with a variety of different equipment and tools and businesses, and even some that are reshoring from China back into the U.S. Love to see that. Administration is very focused on that piece of it. We're able to provide guaranteed loans, which means what we're doing is working with the banks and lowering the interest costs and then kind of stretching out the amortization to the real life of the loan and the life of the product. So that's two of them, housing and business. And then the other side is the community facilities. And this is where I mentioned about being that kind of around the farm, around the community, whether it's, we call it above ground or below ground. So whether it's the buildings that you see or the infrastructure you don't see, the water, the sewer, those kind of things we can help with as well. And that means sewer plants all the way up to water plants, as well as, you know, one of the biggest things we do, fire departments. A lot of departments have recently purchased new equipment, and they found the equipment doesn't necessarily fit in their old buildings. So we're helping them with some of the newer buildings. And again, this is one of those ways that we can help bring those, you know, tax dollars and really help you stretch them out, because a local community can come to us, work through a process and say, hey, we want to build a fire department. We need to expand it. And we want to have that conversation early with them so that they can stretch out those dollars. Maybe it's a 20, 30, 35-year loan, and it lowers the cost on it so the cash flow isn't as much, so that they can have a lower bond and a lower levy as they go forward. So those are kind of our three areas that we work on. It's that housing, business, and then community.
When you hit on that business bullet point, you mentioned some agribusinesses, and I can't help but think about the situation we have with small and medium meat processors across the state, and their need to grow and expand to meet the demand at the local level. And I know that there is a grant called MPEP. Can you tell us more about that
Yes.
and how someone might want to find out more?
Absolutely. And for any of these programs, you can just simple Google search of like Ohio Rural Development and look under programs. And we have a number of programs there that are available and open. And what I'll tell you is MPEP, the meaning, always have to slow down when I say this. It's the Meat Processors Expansion Program. So there's a TPEP, there's an FPEP coming, and I'll get to that one in a minute. But the administration is very focused on making sure that we can not just have, four main producers at the very top, but really reaching out to that lower level and saying, you know what, especially if you're, under 10 employees and you're a meat processing plant, if you're focused on chickens, well, you might be too poultry. And as I say, if you got that much poultry focus, you're too chicken for the program. So, but anybody who's on the beef side of it, you got the cattle going, that's what we really want to see. And if you're under, 10 employees, you can do a simple process and up to 25% grant for new equipment. So that's really kind of the focus. And if you want to go in heavier, you've got a larger processing plant and you want to expand, we can potentially do up to 50% grant. So there's $60 million coming out for across the country. The secretary is getting ready to announce it here shortly. It is up on our website on the grant side. It's available, and I encourage folks, if they, somebody, whether if you've got cattle and you're taking it to a processor, talk to the processor and make sure they know. That's one of the key things. So those are the types of programs, and that'll be available. I think applications will be acceptable for the next 90 days, I believe it is. So don't wait, get the process in and get the application in, and you can start it right online.
You mentioned the other PEPs, the other acronyms. What do they stand for?
So there's two other ones. One that's existing, and this really is available for kind of Ohio and Southern Ohio. If you're within 250 miles of a national forest, you can actually use what's called TPEP, and that is a timber processor expansion program. So there's smaller lumber yards and such. We really want to help those mills grow and expand. And again, sometimes you start to go, man, we could expand, but the cost of this next level of the equipment and such, it's going to take us a while. Well, with a low interest loan, again, your tax dollars working for you, this is where you can apply for and get that TPEP. It's a guaranteed loan, and it costs you less to service that loan. The other one that's coming, and I don't have details on this yet, but wait, there's more. There's the side of it with FPEP, and this is going to be a fertilizer processor expansion. And we are looking forward to that one coming out. We're waiting on the rules on that to come out. The administration, the president, Secretary Rollins are very interested in making sure we focus on these fertilizer costs. They've gone up. In the previous administration, they went up 40% and nothing was done. So we're focused on making sure we start to address that. And that means the pipeline, the processing. So we're really trying to work with those businesses to make sure that they have a simplified lower cost so that the farmers' input costs are lower as well.
Let's take this out to a more broader look at agriculture. I know you mentioned you were at a Farm Bureau meeting recently, so you know that farm families are dealing with tight margins, higher interest rates, uncertainty, a lot of it in agriculture right now. What programs or resources through rural development can help rural businesses and farm-related operations stay viable?
Well, there's a couple of things. So one of the things we really kind of encourage is the local banks in your communities work with us, reach out to rural development. We want to help do guaranteed loans and help support the bank so that their capital is stretched out so we can actually help a lot more folks and really have that lower cost of loans and such going forward. Because if you don't have access to capital, you can't expand. And frankly, I know having parents who are, entrepreneurs and been an entrepreneur myself, if you don't have the capital, you're dead in the water. So we want to make sure that the businesses, I mentioned the grain mill, for example, there's another service. I have to sign some documents here in a little while on $4 million on working capital for them. Those are the kinds of things that we want to be able to support. Additionally, when it comes to the farm side of things and really focusing on exporting. I know the president's on his way to China right as we speak. That is a top issue, making sure that there is a open market, and that frankly around the world there aren't, there have been tariffs against us for quite a long time, and limiting what our people can do. We really want to make sure that the world is opened up, so that, and again, being a Farm Bureau member myself, not to promote them overly much on this, but one of those things is like that's a key piece, making sure that we have accessibility to the world. Because even as there was a recent trip to Japan, I believe it was Vietnam, South Korea, and one of the discussion points was soybeans. They want our soybeans, and Ohio has some of the best soybeans out there. And this is coming from a finance guy. I'm not even the farmer side of it. I do the finance side, and I can tell you, those guys want our soybeans, and they're actually inking deals because we can actually export it more, and we give a higher, better quality product from Ohio.
Access to the world from a trade standpoint is one thing. Access to the world digitally is another, and access to reliable broadband continues to be a major issue in parts of rural Ohio. Where do things currently stand with rural broadband expansion, and what's the progress that you're seeing from where you sit?
Well, Ty, it's a mixed bag. There are parts of it that I know there's been a couple $1 billion that came from DC into Columbus over the last couple of years, and that's been working its way out. It's an interesting thing because making sure, if you want to have smart farming, and all that includes, and I don't pretend to be the expert on all of that. We've got a great gentleman, John Green, who's our COO at Rural Development, and he is actually an expert on this issue. And the amount of data, when you start talking about a field and the leaves in the field and the correct leaves versus the incorrect leaf, the amount of data that takes and being able to access broadband is absolutely essential. So making sure we have that, whether it's through the satellite networks or hard lines and fiber optics, and making sure those hard lines are run. I think there's some opportunities which they come with a mixed bag. Everybody's kind of watching it. We're trying to figure out where this is going to unpack. But if you're talking about what's cutting edge, is figuring out, the benefits and the negatives of even the data center side of things, because a data center is going to have broadband with it. It's going to have a heck of a pipeline when it comes to that, but making sure that there are proper parameters and, things around it as well. So we're watching that as well to figure out what occurs there and see how we can help.
You've had a great bird's eye view from your post of what is happening right here in Ohio. What are some success stories or projects that you believe show the real impacts of USDA Rural Development that you can have on a community or even the local economy as a whole?
It's interesting. There's a couple of them. I've had a couple of calls recently with a fire chief who's like, I don't know what to do. And when you hear just the relief in their voice of, here's what we can help with, here's the process we can take you through. And, one of the things I tell, like the fire chief, the safety service director, who is kind of stressed and he's trying to figure out how to put two nickels together. And having been a council member for 8 years in a small town, I know what that's like. And you're trying to figure out, how do I stretch this budget to make it work? And we want to be good stewards with our money. How do we balance it, and really trying to put that community facilities aspect together? And that's really what we can do. We've worked with a number of communities. Sometimes they'll have a $4 million loan request that they put together, and then as they're working through it, there's one that's just they actually received $1 million grant from the state, and that takes their loan down, which is great because that's their tax dollars coming back to that community. I love to see that invested. And instead of a $4 million loan, they need a $3 million loan. Those are the kinds of things we love to see. We're working through communities that have EPA issues that they're working through, and we're patiently there with them, not to walk away like some of the banks might. We're there to actually long-term to be a partner with them. One of the examples I'll give as well on the business side is in Logan, Ohio, we have Stuart Glass, again, coming over from China, setting up here and doing a type of reflective glass in an old GE facility that was making light bulbs and had shut down and is now open. And they are actually, by the time they are up and running, their refractories, I just got an email yesterday that they are firing up the refractory, which is the furnace where they make the glass, which is it's a furnace the size of a small pool, and it heats up and gets that molten glass. And it'll stay hot for 10 years as they keep heating the glass, adding more, and bringing the parts out, bringing the fluid out. It's an amazing process. So I'm looking forward to seeing that here very soon. But that's 200 jobs coming back to our local community. And they're looking at a next step of another 250 jobs. Those are the kinds of things where we see not just reinvestment in America and in Ohio, but in our rural areas, and real jobs coming back. Because let me tell you, those are not, here's your coffee kind of level jobs. Those are real manufacturing jobs with real good incomes.
A lot to celebrate in the present, but I know that as a director of a government agency, you're always looking to the future as well. As you look ahead, what do you see is the biggest challenge for rural Ohio and the biggest opportunity over the next 5-10 years?
One of the things, and we've been focusing our programming on this, is we're calling it priming the pump. And what we're focused on is a lot of communities, especially some of our smaller, more rural communities, don't know what they don't know. So they don't know how to ask for something. I think of a fire chief who was asking me about a grant process. And he said, I got an application on my desk. I don't know if I'm going to get this. And what I come to find out is, he doesn't have all the paperwork in order. So even if he puts the grant in, Columbus is not going to consider his application complete because he doesn't have all the paperwork. And when your hoses are 10 years past the 10-year obsolescence, you're not looking to spend money on paper. You're going, I need hoses, and I got to get these fire hoses because it's a life and safety issue. So really trying to help build some institutional knowledge at that local township level and then at the county level. And we're focused on that. That's kind of a pet project we're focused on in Ohio, and kind of cutting edge, breaking it out here, because we want to make sure that we can see these local communities are able to access and get to the funds that are available. Because otherwise, and this is that balance I talked about, stewardship side. Look, I wish we didn't have to pay taxes. I wish we didn't have to pay property taxes. But I also like to drive on roads. I like to have police and fire available as well. And there are communities, the 3 C's in Ohio, for example, get a lot of money. The funds go to them, and their hands are always out. And they have professionals up there asking for more money. And a lot of our local communities get overlooked. And we want to make sure that they know, and Secretary Rollins has been very clear on this, we are not forgetting our local communities. President Trump has been very clear. We focus on our rural communities. We take care of our rural communities. And that's what we're focused on, making sure we can help them help themselves.
Our rural community is literally the backbone of the Buckeye State. Despite those 3 C's, half of our land is involved in agriculture in one way, shape, or form. Charles Tassell, the Director of USDA Rural Development for the state of Ohio. Really appreciate your time, and thank you for the information very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ty.
That'll do it for this Ohio AgNet podcast. Thank you as always for watching, listening, wherever you might be. Make sure and like, subscribe, and follow if you listen on your favorite podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, Ohio AgNet TV, and also on Facebook as well. I'm Ty Higgins. We'll see you down the road.